friends, family, fans, and other people. I think that covers everybody. Welcome to the 20th. The 20th. We are in our second decade, not decade, but this is going great. We need Amber back. As you may have noticed, I am not Amber Burgess, but we are here with the Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talks. My name is Paul Regano. I am joined, as always, by the Quarantine Queens, Miss Molly and Miss Katie, and special guest star back for her second episode, Akira Watanabe. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. Katie, Molly, how you feeling?
Alive and kicking.
Ready to do some table talking.
I love it. So as you may have noticed, Amber is not with us right now. We have some technical issues, but I think that we're going to handle this just fine. I think we've got it. Already my phone is making noise.
If nothing else, it'll be a great episode for Amber to sit there and laugh and be like, ha ha ha, don't you wish I was there to do all the tech stuff for you like normal?
Yes, I do.
We appreciate her so much. She
do.
takes such good care of us.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we're not showing all the stuff that we said about her before we started recording. But let's dive right in. As usual, we start with our hot take or our listener, reader, viewer questions. This week's hot take is a fun one. It is Celebrity Deathmatch, Musical Theater Edition. Who do you prefer between Rodgers and Hammerstein and Lerner and Lowe? For those of you not familiar, Rodgers and Hammerstein, considered the fathers of musical theater, with such shows like Oklahoma, Carousel, The King and I, The Sound of Music, the list goes on. Lerner and Lowe were also golden age of theater composers of the American musical theater, with such hits as Camelot, My Fair Lady, and Brigadoon. And I put it to you, Miss Molly. Rodgers and Hammerstein versus Lerner and Lowe.
I'm first. What an honor. Rodgers and Hammerstein all the way. For me, it's not really even a question. I mean, Lerner and Lowe, they're great, but I just feel like we wouldn't have anything, and we wouldn't even have the art form without Rodgers and Hammerstein. And just their shows, like Sound of Music is very near and dear to my heart. Carousel is very near and dear to my heart. And I just think their products as a whole are sort of the foundation of what musical theater is. So that is my hot take.
Piping. Miss Katie.
Yeah, I'm going to second Molly and go with Rodgers and Hammerstein. I guess it's probably because I've had a longer relationship with their work than maybe Lerner and Lowe. Like, I'm all about My Fair Lady. Don't get me wrong. Grew up on that with, Audrey Hepburn. No, Julie Andrews. Yeah, Audrey Hepburn. Yeah.
Audrey Hepburn in the movie Julie Andrews on Broadway.
Yes. But with that said, I just love Rodgers and Hammerstein. I think they have such wonderful pieces that they put together. One of my all-time favorite musical theater pieces is You Have to Be Carefully Taught from South Pacific. I think it is ageless. It has such great meaning. You all should go listen to it today. But yeah, I think Rodgers and Hammerstein takes it for me.
Akira, your hot take?
I think I like Lerner and Lowe better because
all right.
I don't know. I think I like their music better.
I get that. Stephen Sondheim, and of course I'm going to bring it back to Sondheim, but he said he was not the biggest fan of Alan J. Lerner, of his music, but that My Fair Lady was the most enjoyable evening he's ever had at the theater, apart from a show that he wrote. So, I don't know, Steve. Do you really not think the music's great? I think My Fair Lady is incredible, as is Camelot and, Brigadoon. If you don't know Brigadoon, and many people don't, so many beautiful, beautiful melodies in that show. You might know Almost Like Being in Love, which is kind of the standout hit from that one. Many, many people have covered it. I am also going to jump on the bandwagon, though. Unfortunately, I've got to side with Rodgers and Hammerstein in this debate, not because Lerner and Lowe are not accomplished and brilliant composers and creators, but because without Rodgers and Hammerstein, we could never have had Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe. So that's my hot take. I'm going to up the stakes just a little bit because I feel like R&H versus Lerner and Lowe is a little too easy, and Amber can chastise me for this later. But how about let's move forward a couple decades. Stephen Sondheim, composer of Company, Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, A Little Night Music, Follies, lyricist of Gypsy and West Side Story, the list goes on, versus Kander and Ebb, composers of Cabaret, Chicago, Flora the Red Menace, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Curtains. Thoughts? Let's just do like super fast hot takes because we've already spent time on one of these. Molly, go for it.
I am going to say Sondheim because I feel like he uses, obviously, like when you hear Sondheim, you know it's Sondheim, but he's taken that to so many different, like Into the Woods is so different than Follies. And not that there isn't that variety the other way, like with Cabaret and Chicago, but I feel like that's just very much like you sort of know exactly what it's going to be musically, stylistically, that sort of a thing. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like I'm more familiar with Sondheim too, so that could be just my own personal bias a little bit. But I think I'm going to go with Sondheim.
A classic. Can't fault you for that. Miss Katie?
I think this is a super hard one because I think it depends on what you want to see and what you want to listen to, because I feel like Sondheim is very much challenging. So whether you're performing it or you're listening to it, it is a challenge. You have to keep up. It's a lot. Whereas Kander and Ebb is easier listening, I would say, in some ways, but I love the sound of their music. So I don't know. It's a really hard one for me, but I think I'd come down with Sondheim just because it is more of a challenge as a performer and because I love Sweeney Todd. It's my all-time favorite show. So have to go with Sondheim.
Can't argue with that. Sweeney Todd is one of the greatest shows ever written. Akira?
Kander and Ebb because I like Chicago. I'm just
Sure.
loving Chicago.
I mean, I kind of had a feeling that you might be leaning towards Kander and Ebb because of the Chicago angle. I kind of thought Miss Molly might go with Kander and Ebb because of the Fosse angle, because they were such frequent collaborators.
I thought about it. I still am conflicted, I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I like them. I think it's also because I'm performing Into the Woods right now, and so every single night I like relive the brilliance of Sondheim. So
on her deathbed, Molly's going to be like, I should have said Kander and Ebb.
Honestly, that's what it's going to be like. I'm one of those people that if I like change my mind about something or I think I should have said something different, it will bother me for years and I will say nothing. No one will know, but it will bother me.
I'm gonna I think it's pretty obvious if you've watched any previous episode that I'm going to be siding with Stephen Sondheim, but I will say that if we were to like parse it out, music and lyrics, I would say I'd take Sondheim's lyrics over Fred Ebb's lyrics, brilliant though Fred Ebb was in so many ways, and then I'll take John Kander's music over Sondheim's music. And again, the things that Sondheim did with music in the genre of musical theater are unparalleled and unprecedented in many ways. But I think John Kander does not get enough credit. His melodies are, like Katie said, very beautiful and easy to listen to, but they're also very smart. And they don't, you know, he never cuts corners, let's put it that way. And if you want any evidence of that, listen to Kiss of the Spider Woman, which I mentioned earlier, one of their lesser known shows. It's amazing, specifically the song The Day After That. Okay, but let's get into our main discussion this week. We are going to be talking about, last week we talked about our first shows and what got us into the business of show. This week we are going to be talking specifically about the first time that someone gave us money to do it, our first professional job. So I think let's start with just our general takes, and then we'll get into more specifics as we go through. Does that sound good? If you can't tell I'm winging it because Amber isn't here. Please come back, Amber. So again, we'll just keep going in that same order. Miss Molly, talk to me about the first time that someone hired you to do a show professionally.
Yeah, okay. So I think in a previous episode, more towards the beginning, I think I talked about how I played Bielka and Fiddler on the Roof at Round Barn when I was a kid. That was technically my first professional job, but I'm not going to talk about that because A, I already have, and B, like, I was 9. So my first professional job as an adult who has decided to pursue musical theater for my career was at the Barn Theater in Augusta, Michigan. And one other thing I wanted to say in this episode was if you are going to school for musical theater or that's something that you want to do, know that your first audition season, like for summer stock and for things like that, you might not get anything. And that's okay. And that does not mean that you aren't cut out for it, you're not going to go far in this field, yada, yada, yada. My first summer, so I auditioned like the spring of my freshman year of college for summer stock, and I got interest and I got callbacks, and I learned so much from that audition season, but I didn't get a professional job that year. But I ended up doing some really cool other things. I got to go to London for 3 weeks and see a bunch of theater. I coordinated a summer program up in Connecticut that was like a 10-day audition intensive for high schoolers. So I did some other really cool things that honestly gave me more experience for what I'm doing now as an actor, but also like in other fields of theater. So anyway, but my first professional job was my second summer after my sophomore year of college, and I did the whole audition thing. For me, it was really helpful because I had a couple of connections to the Barn the summer before, even though I wasn't hired like as an apprentice actor for the summer. They did hire me to play keyboard too in the pit of one of their musicals. So that was sort of my in. And I took that job not because I was really good at it or it was something I honestly really wanted to do, but because I knew that if I could make a connection, then it would probably help me the next year. So I also knew the music director at that theater because he was my accompanist at Western Michigan University where I was going to school. And I think that he knew that I was a pretty strong musician and just my personality and the way that I worked would be a really good fit for the Barn because it's a pretty intense summer. They put up 6 to 8 main stage shows. Each one runs for about 2 weeks. You have a week and a half turnaround time to learn the next show. You're also performing in a cabaret show every night. You also have a work area at the theater outside of that. So I was coordinating their youth outreach program, which is, again, how I got more interested in that type of thing as well. But like you clean the theater every day, you work in the box office, you have different shifts, and you have one day off like every 2 weeks. It's a lot. However, best first professional job I could ever hope for. The first show that we did, so I was actually on my way. I'd sent in a video audition to the Barn, and I was on my way to MTAs, which is the Midwest Theater Alliance. It's like a big unified audition for regional theaters, especially summer theaters. There's a lot of college students there. I was in the car on the way to this audition, and the Barn called me, and they were like, "We want to offer you the job." And I was like, great, because that's the job I wanted. So then I went into Midwest, and I was like, this doesn't even matter. And that was kind of nice, because of course I wanted to see if I got anything else, but at that point I was taking that job, and that's what I was going to do. I think another good point is when you get to that point, there might be like, I really want to work at this theater, or I really want to do this, and don't necessarily close a door once you get an offer, but also don't hold out for something else if you have an offer waiting for you that you could take. In my personal opinion, you should be taking the jobs that are right in front of you, because in my experience, that has always led to the next job for me. And I think that is really important. So anyway, the first show we did was Civil War. There aren't really a lot of female roles in that show, so I walked across the stage a couple of times. But then the first role that I played for them that summer was young Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. I was Luann in Hairspray, so I got to be one of the nicest kids in town. I also was an Atta Girl in Bullets Over Broadway, one of my favorite shows I've ever been in. So fun. Such fun dancing, just so fun outfits. It's a great show. I love that show. Trying to think of what else we did that summer. And I know I'm forgetting some. But anyway, that was my first professional job. I ended up returning to that job the next summer as well, along with doing some other professional gigs from there in Michigan. But yeah, that was my first one.
I love that. Some things that stuck out to me there too, was you talked about your first audition season and not booking anything, but learning a lot. And it just brought me back to that old expression, experience is the thing you get when you don't get the thing you want,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And I think there's when you compare that then with going to the Midwest after you had booked the barn, and having that attitude of like, this is really just fun now. This doesn't, this doesn't, and that's, I mean, I don't know how that went for you, but like that is the best attitude to bring into any audition is like, this is
Yeah.
just fun. This doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
obviously it matters.
yeah. There's this quote that actually Amber shared with me when I was interning this past spring, and it stuck with me. So shout out to Amber. And I
Even
think
though she's not
I
here,
want
she's
to
here.
say that Carol Burnett said this. Knowing Amber, it was probably Carol Burnett. But the quote was, "Never go into an audition hungry. Like always come into the audition like it would be an amazing opportunity if you got that audition, but you don't need it to like survive as a person. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
don't need that job to continue being you and having a fulfilling life." And she'd probably say it a lot better than me, but that has really stuck with me since she mentioned that.
You said it very eloquently though.
Oh, thanks.
Um, uh, Also like that, you talked about that first summer and how it was a lot. And I think this is probably something we'll come back to a lot throughout this table talk, but that your first show really doesn't matter what you expect, there's going to be something that you don't expect. You could have someone explain everything that's going to happen to you that year and you're still going to get surprised. um, and it really sounds like they put you through your paces.
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, so wow, a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. I learned so much.
Miss Katie, tell me about the first time someone paid you to make art.
Um, well, my first stage gig that I ever got, so I was that person that Molly was talking about. I had been auditioning throughout college for summer stock every year, working my tail off to try and book. Never got booked, was pretty devastated, and because I'd always have to go back to my hometown, which I hated doing because it meant I had to work at McDonald's all summer. Hated that. But I ended up booking that last semester of my college career with Tent Theater down in Springfield, Missouri. It's actually housed on Missouri State University's campus, which is where I went to college. And it's an in-house kind of thing. It is an equity theater, so we do have equity members who are in the lead positions, and then the rest are, non-ec or EMC. And I just remember I was just an ensemble member. I had a name, so I felt really proud about that. But I didn't really have anything to talk about. But I was in a lot of different scenes, and it was 110 in the Shade. One of the most beautiful shows that I was completely unfamiliar with up until that point. Like, went in with no knowledge of the show whatsoever. And they do 3 shows a season. I was only booked for the first one, which was 110 in the Shade. And I was leaving school with 2 job offers lined up for that summer. And one was with Tent Theater and one was with Great Plains Theater out in Kansas, in Abilene, Kansas. And for someone who had struggled booking up until that point, it was like, thank goodness. Like, I really am going to be okay. I earned this. I worked my butt off for it. And like, I deserve this. And it was just nice. That first day of rehearsal, I was really nervous because up until that point, I had only done one main stage production musical at our school, which they run it as if it is an equity theater when you're in rehearsals there. And it was Sweeney Todd. So I had just come off of Mrs. Lovett and booked these 2 gigs and was looking forward to the start of my career. And it just kind of kept happening after that. I would just book after that. But that first experience, that first day of rehearsal, I was super nervous. I walked in, there's these equity members there that I don't know. There's a bunch of non-equity people that I don't know. And my professors were there as directors because they direct the shows. So I knew them, and I knew some of my classmates had been booked and whatnot. So that was helpful, but it was scary. But at the same time, like end of day, I kept up and I was fine. And that really boosted my confidence. So I was that person Molly was talking about. So if you're not booking and you're in college, it's a-okay. It's fine. Keep working. If you're not booking shows at your college, keep working. Find opportunities. Create them yourselves. Because I'll tell you what my mentor in college, she was one of my professors. She told me when I booked about the curse, as they refer it, as all of our professor. Yeah, they say there's a curse. So if you have booked shows throughout college every summer, if you are always on the main stage, whatnot, it's interesting because those people at our program tend to not book their senior year. Like they tend to not get anything right out of college, and they freak out. They don't know how to handle the rejection. And a lot of them quit right off the bat because a lot of them are heading to New York, and New York is hard, and you don't book right away in New York. I mean, some people do. They're amazing, whatever. But you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. And she told me, she's like, it's a curse because you haven't had all those opportunities, but you kept working and you know how to deal with the rejection, and you're going to be fine. And I was like, bless you for saying that. Bless you. So that was a long story to tell you that I worked at 10th Theater. I did 110 in the Shade in Springfield, Missouri.
I love that though. And I love the curse. I think what I like to say is everybody needs to get their butt kicked when they're like early, at least once. I know I did. Miss Molly talked about how she was working, not only doing the shows or playing keyboard, but she was also working in the box office, and you're cleaning the theater. I mean, everybody needs a little shock early on to kind of say, whoa. And also I love what you're talking about the first day being scary, and that doesn't go away.
Every gig I've ever had, that first day rehearsal, super nervous, guys, every time.
I've come back to theaters where I've worked before, where I know everybody or almost everybody, and every time I stand up at that first rehearsal and start running that first music rehearsal, there's still the butterflies and the nerves. Doesn't go away, and that's a good thing. You should feel that.
Yep.
What else? I'm trying to keep,
I would also say another fun quote, since Molly shared a nice little, and then I just shared what my professor told me about the curse. But that same professor once told me my senior year that hard work will beat out talent every time if talent does not work hard. Keep that in mind, friends. It's such a big one. Work hard. Even if you're the most talented person in the world, you could waste it away if you do not work hard, or if you're difficult to work with. Just do what you're supposed to do.
It's true, and I know that's a sentiment that we have expressed on the show before, but it cannot be overstated.
Yep.
Yeah, and remember when you're scared on that first day that you would not be there if you hadn't earned that place. You deserve to be there as much as everyone else. It's very important. We drive that point home to me. Akira, tell me about your first professional show.
My first professional show I got paid is at the Roundburn Theater as a pillar in the Legally Blonde. Samba casted me, and that was my after graduation. So my first gig I got after graduation. And I was so excited, and I was so nervous. And I think Paul picked me up at the airport and brought me to the Roundburn Theater.
That's right. I remember that now. Oh, that's awesome.
But that was late night. So I was so scared too, because I live in Nebraska, which is countryside. So I know what's countryside look like. But Napanee, Indiana is so countryside. And between the airport to the Roundburn Theater, there's nothing between there. So I'm like, I think we are going the right way. I think he's a good person, but I'm scared.
I think we might have actually taken a wrong turn early on. Didn't
Maybe.
we?
Paul, she thought you were abducting her.
No, but I was so scared because it was my first paid job too. So I wasn't also my seniors, I didn't have any Japanese international senior student. So I didn't have any idea how international students get the job. And also in our college, when I was like sophomore year, most of the senior graduated and there is no one else like above me. So no one teach me what to do for the audition or anything. So I was afraid like what's gonna be like, how do I get the job and what's the job gonna be like. I know it's not gonna be like a Broadway because I have never seen the backstage, but I'm like, I don't know. Well, so that was scary, but it was good.
I that's, so many of our stories, we have been talking about who it's who right? It's not what it's who it's both. But the fact that there was not, we talk so much about that mentorship and people helping you, and that there was no one above you who could say, this is how I did it, just makes your story even more. I've always been in awe of your story, but even more so now. I also did not know that was your first professional gig.
Yeah. During my college year, I had some like summer stuff, but I wasn't get paid because I was college student. Also, I was international student, so I had to get a work permit. And if I get a work permit, it's like long process, and it's not worth it to pay.
That's so crazy. Well, you walked into that first rehearsal like a pro, I remember. So you had us all snowed.
Kira, also, Amber had been bragging about you before you ever even got there. I just remember her being like, oh, you're going to love her. She's an amazing dancer and she's so amazing. And then you walked in and you were just like the nicest human ever. And you're such a great dancer. And I just love working with you.
Thank you. I think because the Round Barn Show was only gig I got when I graduated. So like if Amber didn't offer me any job, I don't think I'm a musical theater actor, because if I don't get a job, I have to go back to Japan. I get kicked out if I don't have a job for 3 months. That's the deal for international student.
Wow.
So I'm so blessed for Amber.
Well, we are equally fortunate. So we all, man, Amber doesn't have to be here. She's here no matter what. She's in the room. Excellent. My story is a little different, because I'm not going to talk about my first professional acting gig, because I exist in this sphere more as a music director. And I think I've spoken about the first time that I music directed ever professionally. I was in high school, and the elementary school that I had gone to asked me to come back and play piano for the show. And I took that as, they want me to music direct. But the first, so I'm not counting, I did 2 shows in high school with that elementary school. But the first time that I said to myself, I am going to pursue working professionally as a musician, was the summer between my junior and senior year of junior. It doesn't matter what year it was. I'm pretty sure that was it. I had rented an apartment off campus, which, which I lived in during the year. And now I didn't have to be at school, but I still had this apartment up there. So I said, well, I'm going to pay my rent by making music. I'm going to give the Reader's Digest version, because someday I'll write a book about my first professional music direction show. I answered an ad for a show called, and this was like 2007, 2008-ish. The show was called Saddam the Musical, or A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Baghdad. Very topical at the time. And I said, well, they are not going to pay me to have an opinion about how good this show is. They're just going to pay me to play the music and direct the music of the show. And I submitted, and I went into the city. I met with the composer. I went into the city to meet him in the basement of the drama bookshop where Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote In the Heights. This was around the time that he was writing that show. So like very possible that I just like walked by him in the hallway, had no idea who he was. Him and Alex Lacamoire or Tommy Kail or whoever. We performed the show in that very basement. I showed up so I got the job. I walked in, he put the score down in front of me. I played a few bars. He said, "You got the job." It was very informal. When I showed up to my first rehearsal, I was late because I was coming from outside the city and I didn't know how trains worked. I was not super late, but I was late. And I got there and I said to him, "Hey, I'm so sorry I'm late. I got here as fast as the trains could get me here. I'm so sorry." And he said, "Me too." And I was like, oh my God, he's going to fire me on my first day. No, he was sorry because he had to tell me that the show was canceled. Someone had dropped out, had just come in that day and said, "Robert, I can't do the show." And he said, without this, I don't want to find a replacement. As it turns out, he had been trying to get this show on since the previous November. It was now June, and people had kept dropping out. And he said, "You know what? It's just not worth it." But he turned around and hired me for the next show he wanted to do, which was a piece called Central Park, the Musical, which now is the title of an Apple TV animated musical. Not the same thing. It's not. We had a cast of 35 and a band. He put together a 5-piece band for me to orchestrate for. The night before we opened, he turned to me and said, so before the show starts, you're gonna play a little overture?" And I wish in that moment that I had the chutzpah to turn around and say, "You're gonna write an overture?" But no, that night I went home and, too excited about the challenge, I wrote an overture for our 5-piece band to play. And the first time we played it together was opening night. It was thrilling. As I said, 35 people in the cast, 5 people in the band. We ran for a month just on weekends, I believe. So for a total of maybe 12 shows or so. In that very basement, 35 people. I don't know how many of our viewers have been to the basement of the drama bookshop, but oh boy, it's not huge. And it's not really much of a performance space. Our set was a park bench that one of the cast members' parents constructed for us. It was interesting. We outnumbered the audience every performance except for one. I mean, 40 people on the stage, I guess you're gonna. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. I learned a lot. One of the most important things I learned from that, and this is something that I think actors are actually pretty bad at, and it's not their fault. It's because they are told that they just do what they're told and put up with whatever circumstances we throw at them. When he first brought the show to me, he had not written it down on paper, and he knew that I had the ability to make, engraved, printed sheet music with my computer. And he asked if I would do that for this. And I said, sure. And what that entailed was him coming to my house outside the city for 5 days in a row, for like 4 hours a day, sitting at the piano and singing his songs to me. And I would go, "So it goes like this," and play something. And he'd go, "Yeah, that's it." And I mean, sometimes he would say, "No, that's not it." And I'd change something and go, "Yeah, that's it." So like, he was still the composer. I was the arranger, let's say. And then I took that and put it into legible format. And the day of the first rehearsal, I handed him the invoice for that work. And he said, yep, that's great. That all looks good. So I'll get that to you. And I said, okay. And I put the score that I printed back in my bag. And he said, no, I need to make copies for the cast that's coming. And I said, right, but you haven't paid for these. And that was the chutzpah that I did have. And he said, well, I need to make the copies. And I said, well, I need to be paid for my work. And he ended, I mean, like he never reneged on anything. He was always, he paid in full for everything. But I did have to lay down the law early on and say, if you're going to ask me to do these things, you're going to pay me for these things, because this is beyond the realm of music direction. So that is something that I would say I would want everyone listening to this to know. Be an advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid to say, this is what I'm worth, and this is what we agreed on. Yeah. That was probably, I talked about the harrowing and terrifying first days. I think that was the most terrifying first day, because I was 20 years old and I was in a room with people up to age 50 in this show. Yeah. So a couple of things that I've noticed as a sort of trend with our first professional shows, and this is exciting for our younger viewers who are watching and looking forward to a life in the theater. So many of us are talking about shows that our viewers might not have heard of. We talked about Civil War and Bonnie and Clyde. So they might know Bonnie and Clyde. That's a little more recent. But 110 in the Shade, which Katie, you said like you didn't know until you did it. There's so many shows that I was not familiar with until I did the show. And I think that's so exciting as you're one of the benefits that you get is you become more well-read. Why don't we go around real quick to put you on the spot? Name a show that you knew nothing about or very little about until you were in it, until you had done it. And I'll give you a second to think about it, because I think I need to think about it too. Okay, it looked like Molly's got one.
I have mine. Well, I think there's quite a few, but one of the first ones that came to my mind that I ended up loving was Disaster the Musical. I had heard of it, but it's basically like a spoof off of all of the different 70s disaster movies, and it's written by Seth Rudetsky. It's absolutely hilarious. And now that I think I've talked about it on Table Talks before. I feel like I'm getting to this point where I'm like, oh, wait, I've definitely said this before. But it played really well in a regional theater setting, and I did it at the Barn. We actually closed with it my first summer, and we got such a good response that we opened with it the next summer. We literally just left the set up, recasted the roles we needed to recast, added some new choreography, spruced it up, and did it again. Because so much, and we only did it for a week. So, yeah, that was one. Bullets Over Broadway was one that I became more familiar with when I did it, that I loved. And there was another one. Oh, not for our younger viewers, but for our older viewers, Evil Dead the Musical.
Oh, yeah.
I did that last summer. I played Shelley. Just a blast. Not very deep, but a blast.
That is a fun musical. Again, for our older viewers, but yeah. Anyone else? Katie.
One that I should have known, because I know some of the music, but I did not know the storyline, and you're gonna laugh at me, Paul. Guys and Dolls. Did it at Round Barn. Did not know the show very well. Did not know. And luckily I was just the random, what's her name? Can't even think of her name right now. Kavanaugh? I don't know. So like I got to play the Texan at the beginning of the show, which meant I got to walk across the stage a couple times. And then I was done until the end of Act 1. Then I came back. And then I just did a couple cameos as that one character. So not a big deal, but super fun, because I had been going 90-0 with Round Barn that season at that point, and I was ready for a break. But then the other one, I would say that was a big one for me, was my first show in Chicago, which was Waste Watchers, the musical. And nobody really knows that show because it's not that big yet. Like, I don't think it'll get huge, but the music, it's kind of, they don't call it parody music, but it's basically parodied off of other music and with different lyrics. So like you kind of could pick out what it was based off of, that song, but the lyrics are completely different, and even the music's a little different. But yeah, so didn't know that show until I walked in first day of rehearsal. So
yeah, For me, it was A Year with Frog and Toad, which I then fell in love with. I did it a few years back in Texas. I didn't know it, and so as soon as I booked the job, I started listening to it in the car, and it's just so charming. I love
It's so cute. So cute. We did that at Rumburn a couple years ago.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. Super cute.
Akira, did you have one?
Honestly, until I get casted, I don't know most of musical shows. I didn't know Legally Blonde, so when I got casted, I'm like, there's a show called Legally Blonde. Let me see. That was my first Legally Blonde. I didn't know Happy Days, Copacabana,
Oh yeah.
Guys and Dolls, 9 to 5, Hello Dolly, Jesus Christ Superstar. I'm no Christian too, so I don't know. And Joseph and Amazing Technical Dream Coat. I'm like,
That's a tough one. And also, like, I think it's so exciting that like you go from complete ignorance to total, like, you know everything about it, kind of like that. Yeah, it's same thing with Happy Days. There's a Happy Days musical I didn't even know, and then now I have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Happy Days musical. Yeah, and I'll admit also that I didn't know most of Legally Blonde. I had seen it, but I didn't really know it. When I started MDing it even, I was still not super familiar because I saw it on Broadway, and I know this is my real hot take this week, but I was not a huge fan of it on Broadway. And so I had no desire to like keep listening to it or seeking out content from it. And then all of
Molly
a
is
sudden,
aghast.
directing it.
She's
I
just struck. She's
No
done.
desire. So dramatic.
Yeah, I do apologize, but that just didn't. I don't know. We can deconstruct Legally Blonde and our thoughts on whether its merit as a musical in another episode, perhaps. So we've talked about all of our first shows. We have done our hot take. I know this is a little shorter, I feel, than our usual fare. I don't want to rush off. But I also don't want to prolong it unnecessarily. I know that we could talk for days, the four of us, but I don't know how entertaining or informative that would be for our viewers.
I mean, is it entertaining, informative any other time?
I learn every time I watch one of these.
I don't talk well today, so words is hard.
My words don't make, my brain did the dumb, and I don't. Yeah. So with that in mind, we clearly need Amber. From Goshen Theater Drama Club, I am Paul Regano. Thank you so much to our quarantine queens, Molly Hill and Katie Barnes, our special guest, Akira Watanabe. We'd love to keep having you back if you're still interested in hanging around. Yes? Hey, great. It's decided. I'm now, Amber isn't here. I'm the decision maker.
I was just about to ask, Paul, you've gone from like not regular to the host today. Are you willing? Are you gonna be on next week's episode, or?
Actually, for the first time, I will have to take a hiatus next week. I could not get out of my acupuncturist appointment, and so I will have to be away next week, which means Amber has to come back.
Got to get the internet working.
Yeah, clearly. And I don't want to say she's the reason that our episodes are longer, but I mean, look how efficient we were. Man.
No, it just meant that you didn't have a buddy to go in deep with Lerner and Lowe or Rodgers and Hammerstein. That's exactly what it is.
That's what it is. Because next week I won't be here, and it'll be the same thing. So really, the magic formula for 3-hour episodes is
as long as
Paul and
Katie
Amber geek out.
As long as Katie and I never have to host, I think we'll be good.
I'll be like, okay, tell me your story. Great job. Moving on.
Well, as always, we have to thank Goshen Noon Kiwanis for their sponsorship and support. Without this series would not be possible. we couldn't do what we do and continue to educate and entertain our viewers. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, the viewer, for watching. I'm stalling for time now as I try to think of a catchy phrase to sign off with. From all of us here at the Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talks, thank you, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.